Business owners and managers, this podcast episode is for you. Today's guest is going to be Leonard Trinidad. Leonard is with Solve HR. Solve HR is based out of San Antonio, Texas, but operates in 47 different states across the country. Solve HR also has a 97% client retention rate.
Welcome to the Latino Business Report. This podcast covers business, people, and issues of the day from a Latino perspective. The Latino Business Report is brought to you by TAMAC, the Texas Association of Mexican American Chambers of Commerce. TAMAC is the leading Hispanic business organization in Texas since 1975. Now for your host, J.R. Gonzalez.
Today we're going to be talking about the importance of handbooks. Leonard, every company probably should have an employee handbook, but a lot of them don't. Can you kind of give us an idea of what the importance of having a handbook is?
Yeah, great question, JR. A handbook is something that a company should have that is delivering a transparent and consistent message to their employees and staff. It's allowing them to be updated on company changes. That can include policies, how work is performed, things such as COVID, technology changes, in regards to social media or how that's handled in the workplace, frequent law changes and cultural changes, as dress code changes, laws around harassment take place, that consistent message being in a wording that's transparent to all employees where it's easy for them to understand enables a business to go ahead and proceed with the day-to-day without the worry of making sure that something comes off as, biased, offensive, or, even in the eyes of the law, not so compliant.
I hear the term policy manual. Is an employee handbook and a policy manual basically the same thing, or is there a difference?
Yes and no. So that employee handbook will consist of a couple of different things in it. So a good handbook will have company history, the mission of the company, the values of the company, but it will also consist of policies and procedures for the employees to understand and follow.
Leonard, is it required by law to have an employee handbook?
It's definitely not. It's nothing that the Department of Labor is going to walk into a business and ask to see and fine you for if you don't have. However, the employee handbook, much like any kind of insurance, right? It's there to protect not only yourself and the business, but also the employees as well. It's a lot better to make sure that you have that protection versus not having that protection and needing it later on in the future.
What would you say if somebody comes up and goes, but Leonard, I only have 4 employees. Why do I need a handbook?
Yeah, good question, because a lot of times we run into customers that are, several employees to several hundred employees that are just now looking at and implementing a handbook because they feel like they're losing control or messaging with what's going on with the workplace. My suggestion is there's never a bad time to do it, but the sooner the better. Think about it this way, right? If you just started a business and you're having that first employee come on board, you want that employee to understand the company's mission, their values. You want them to understand how you go about things and, what can be expected at the job site. So never a bad time, but the sooner the better.
Okay, so what you're saying is from whether you have 1 employee or 100 employees, it's a good idea to have a handbook.
Yep, very true. Again, I'd go with the recommendation of right when you're starting that business with that 1 employee, I would start looking at a handbook.
By having a good employee handbook, what kind of problems can an employer avoid?
One of the biggest things, and probably the elephant in the room, is problems around law changes. Every time that there's a new governor, a new president, as we have now, orders go into place that change the dynamics and the compliance of the workplace. And let's be honest, we live in a very litigious society. So when you're thinking about discriminatory issues or lawsuits, a lot of it when it goes to court, if it goes that way, or even mediation, is going to become a he said, she said type scenario. So without a handbook to back up the procedures that were taken by the company, it becomes very hard to prove because that message can be inconsistent and can become biased. Some of the other issues that it opens up also is it allows hazards, offensive behaviors to take place, even if the culture is not fostering that type of environment naturally, right? There's no rule of law per se where an employee can understand what may or may not be done, and that can get into the way of other people's jobs and how they're doing things, and it can be taken the wrong way or even in an unsafe manner.
I understand what you're saying, but also for an employer, especially a small company or an upstart, would it take a long time? Is it time consuming and expensive to start a handbook, or is there an easy way to do it?
I'd say yes and no to the question. There are ways for you to go out there and do it on your own. You can go online and you can Google, templates for employee handbooks and build one. The biggest issue I'd say in doing something with that is, one, a lot of times business owners are piecemealing handbooks together. So they're taking policies from other things that they like. That gives an inconsistent message and it really doesn't give the values of the company. And a lot of stuff may not apply. If you're a company that's 50 employees and you put in a policy because of a law around 50 employees, it doesn't pertain to those companies that have 10 employees. So yes, you can do it. I would recommend if you did it that way, that it would be, you should get it legally reviewed. Make sure that your wording's correctly, no policies are overlapping or inconsistent with what the rule of law is. What I would suggest too is where you can take a lot of the pressure off yourself is enlisting an HR company like Solve that would go out, understand the company, understand what you want and policies and procedures you want to put into place, and let an HR professional write that for you, let it go through the legal review. And then as changes are made, it can be updated with amendments and communicated out to the employees.
Leonard, thank you very much. Those have been some great, helpful tips. I hope that some of our listeners can take advantage of that and follow up. And remember, folks, being in business just isn't about the products and services you sell. It's also about taking care of your employees and following the law.